welcome everyone. We're here with Ahmed Shaderrab. He's the founder and CEO of Run PMO Consulting. And I see some of you that were part of this morning sessions as well. So thank you for your participation. And we hope that you have been enjoying PMO Career Week so far. Today, Ahmed will talk to us about a very important topic, the anatomy of a successful PMO leader. What makes a PMO leader successful? That's what everyone wants to know. So he will tell you about the hard skills, the soft skills that it takes for a PMO leader to thrive at work. Welcome, Ahmed, and have a good session.
Yes, thank you so much indeed, Chanel. Pleasure to be here. And hello, everyone. So I promise it's going to be short and sweet and going to be sort of like an insightful session. So the topic of today is going to be, as Chanel said, the anatomy of a successful PMO leader. So what we're going to cover today is it's going to be around the PMO leadership state of mind and the why behind successful PMO leadership and why often PMO leaders fail and what great leader should do differently, and then we're going to touch base the anatomy of a modern PMO leader. And then we go sort of discovering where PMO leaders create value and the mindset shift from process to a business impact. And finally, we're going to touch base and it's sort of gives a sneak peek around the proven PMO minimum viable progress value model leadership blueprint. Okay, then let's go. So before I'm going to deep dive, so I would like to start with the neuroscience approach for a successful PMO transformation journey. And it's often start with the PMO leader himself or herself. So before you start thinking to building the right capabilities, the right solution, and the right sort of like framework, you got to think for you as a business transformation leader, as a powerhouse who's really driving successful business transformation journey. It's all about the state of mind. It's all about the mindset, the purpose, the clarity, and the resilience that really position you to navigate through different key stakeholders. Some of them the lover, some of them the hater, and some of them are the don't care. So I'm going to give you sort of like a blueprint, strategy, and framework at high level that really position you, as an exceptional powerhouse PMO leader who's really driving undeniable and unstoppable business value. So oftentimes, the PMO leaders, they just rush into building, processes, tool, templates, framework, methodologies, and they never think about how they're going to position themselves as a strategic business partner and strategy navigator and look at themselves from the inside. And I believe it's all about, from my humble experience. So before I'm gonna dig deep, I would love for you to share with you sort of like a very small journey, a personal journey. My mom battling sort of like a Parkinson movement disorder. She was going through sort of like anxiety, agitation, and sleep disorder. And my mom means everything to me. And I believe everyone could possibly relate to that. So I realized even my mental, spiritual, and physical and emotional readiness really wasn't unstable, to give me the position to navigate through the different key stakeholders and to establish sort of like emotional and mental resilience, So a successful PMO leader really starts with transforming themselves, not transforming the system. Think about it as an instrument. If you are not in harmony from the inside, you cannot really be in harmony from the outside. So the inner side, the state of mind, the mental peace, and the emotional and the spiritual readiness is really critical for any sort of like a successful business transformation journey, often the PMO leader taking care of. So what you will discover today is sort of like a discipline structure approach for understanding and enhancing your own PMO leadership through sort of a neuroscience lens or standpoint. It's really connecting the foundation of the broader goals of the business transformation and stakeholder engagement. And it's simply speaking, so if you really position yourself, you have sort of like a stable state of mind. If you have a harmony from the insides, you would have the capabilities to really navigate through different key stakeholders. You build trust, you be agile leader, and you really, earn and sit your seat at the leadership table. Okay. So it's very critical and very crucial for any sort of like successful journey. You have to design, before you design and you start jumping, thinking, okay, how solution would be built, what sort of like assessment shall I undertake? You have got to think and feel differently before starting anything. So you must start with yourself first. So what we're going to create, or if possibly, think just for a moment about your SMP. SMP stands for spiritual, mental, physical, and emotional readiness. So you got to think about your SMP profile or leadership profile and look at it from a neuroscience standpoint, because cognitively speaking, if you're not really in a very stable, high sort of like stable mental and physical and emotional state of mind, you cannot really perform well. So PMO is not really about governance, it's not about reporting, it's not about processes, tool, and templates. However, it's all about the influence, your leadership style, someone thinking holistically at the whole strategy life cycle or value chain, and start influencing from the inner state. So as I said, think about it as a tuning and an instrument. If you're not really in a harmony from the inside, you cannot be in a harmony from the outside. And the reason why, oftentimes the PMO leaders or anyone who's really driving transformation journey, driving a projects or leading a transformation initiatives, you're driving change, and change is often with people. People often is not really resistant to change. People, they don't like change to be happen to them. They like change to be done with them and through them. So you got to understand your with them. You got to understand, their need, the most important thing for them. You got to partner with them. You got to build trust. So the SMP is very crucial. So even if you have sort of like a very solid framework and best strategies, okay, you cannot really be successful unless you have the emotional and the physical and spiritual mental readiness to drive this kind of journey into success. And I'm gonna reveal the secret letters down the line when I touch the upcoming slides. You will have more clarity about what I mean by saying so. So why neuroscience matter in the PMO? A high-performing PMO often think, feel, and act in alignment from the in and out. So the neuroscience really help shifting the behaviors at subconscious level, and the SMP really fuel agility, impact, and resilience. So simply speaking, as long as you have sort of like a stable, high level of SMP profile, that will really position yourself to ease into driving a very successful journey, a less friction and resistance for the key impact stakeholders. So eventually we're going to drive undeniable successful result. So let me bring it down with more clarity. So the narrative behind the spiritual readiness, simply, if you are really clear on your purpose, and oftentimes PMO, when they really jump to driving any sort of business transformation journey, they don't really understand the why, the value proposition, why the PMO stand at the first place. So you get to know your values, and often your values show up in the way how you're going to lead. And the mental piece of the SMP is really got to be laser focused. You got to really make tough decision calmly and very quickly, and you got to have the physical readiness. Readiness simply meaning, do you have the stamina to lead under any sort of circumstances? Okay. Do you have really emotional readiness? Can you really self-regulate yourself, build trust, and bounce back when there's sort of like a step backs and challenges down the road, or not? And the reason why, when you have this kind of stable state of mind, when you have stable SMP, you're gonna be able to map this out with the intended business outcome and the goal and objective, then strategic business priorities, the senior leadership asking you, to drive. So I give you an example. If you are really emotionally balanced and sympathetic, easily could foster trust. When you foster trust, the leadership or the PMO mandate gonna be sponsored by the C-suite executive. So if you are really mentally scattered, you're gonna project confusion. Then the PMO will lack direction. On the other side, if really mentally you are unfocused leader, so this really will position, mistrust with the key stakeholders. So the PMO leader who's really lacking focus, oftentimes by shifting priorities, he's gonna fail to communicate effectively. He's gonna overwhelm the team with often sort of changing priorities and requirements. So the outcome, when the stakeholder really losing trust, which is a very critical and very crucial component to drive successful journey, because at the end of the day, it's not your PMO, it's the key stakeholder PMO. So if you are not really, it's often bounce back about the know, like, and how. If they don't know you, they don't like you, they don't trust you, they will never work with you, they never support you. and they're not gonna buy the PMO. So the PMO we're gonna see unreliable because you're losing the trust, you're losing the momentum, okay, and you're losing the confidence, okay, because you are emotionally and mentally you're not really stable. So, however, there's sort of like key actions, and sort of like, remediation strategies. If you really do this kind of checkpoints on a week, on a specific cadence, let's say monthly, quarterly, and annually, to make sure your SMP is really into track. So for instance, monthly, you have check yourself. Am I ready from the SMP, all this dimension? Am I stable or not? You might have sort of like quarterly a mental or accountability pattern. Often you could really pattern with the PMO sponsor, or you might have a mentor. So because the PMO championship is really bounce back when you have the right, accountability partner who's really guide you, position you, and watching your mental and spiritual and emotional and physical readiness. So even you could do sort of like annual SMP retreat and recalibration workshop. So, and also you could draft sort of like 3-4 actions per quarter. Every single quarter, you put 1 to 3 to 4 actions to really strengthen your SMP readiness and directly connect them to the PMO, biggest picture, of the strategy. And the reason why the annual SMP retreat or workshop is very crucial for the PMO leader to ease into sustainable sort of like SMP. You got to stay away from a daily operation, reflect and reset and align. And you could use any sort of like assessment and coaching. By the way, I'm going to share with you sort of like an action tool, sort of like a thinking tool that really help you to navigate through all the action step by step on a monthly, quarterly, and annually, what you're going to do about your SMP, so that you would really have high level of SMP in place. So you could possibly leverage this kind of assessment and coaching guidelines to really evaluate where you are across the 4 dimensions. So the retreat and the annual, kind of recalibration is really help you to set new intentions, commitments, and strategies for the upcoming year, so you come fresh for the new year. And you could possibly surround yourself with a like-minded PMO transformation leaders, peer with them, seeking the support and learning from them. Let me give you a very quick example. So, or action taken you can take for today. Pick one single weakness, reflecting back on your PMO journey or any sort of like experience or story where you have a weak state of mind, emotionally, physically, mentally, or spiritually. Then define sort of like a plan of action to really bring it back into track. For instance, if you are really emotionally not really stable, so you could do sort of like a weekly reflection of journaling. For the mental piece, you could do sort of like a weekly or daily priority setting routine. So connect this action to the organization impact, and all the time map it out to the intended business outcome, the PMO value proposition, the biggest picture of the strategy. Because eventually the C-suite executive of the leadership, what matters the most for them is you driving business value. It's not about governance, it's not about reporting, it's not about perfecting templates or perfecting the PM or the strategy execution side of the picture. So you could commit to measuring every single sprint cycle, 90 days, okay, track the changes to realign, to focus, and to bring the trust and engagement across different key stakeholders back in track. So upcoming slide, I'm going to touch base why the PMO, why successful PMO, or I mean the reason behind successful PMO journey. So there is specific traits or 7 traits I could possibly argue. Those really position the PMO as a successful, a powerhouse PMO leader, and it's going to be shaping the future of the PMO landscape. When you're really shifting your mindset, shifting your focus to be a more strategic thinker. So look at the holistic strategy life cycle. Don't really think about the strategy execution. You got to support the strategy formulation, strategy execution, and strategy realization. And the outcome-driven kind of mindset is really focusing on the business outcomes, not really projects outputs. Okay, and you got to be adaptive, nimble, and change capable. So you got to navigate sort of like shifting priorities and agility, because oftentimes my shifting priorities come along and you got to adapt and move fast. So really, you could really, move forward with agility. And the business partner, this is the key critical components, because when you speak to the leadership, it's totally different when you're speaking to project management team. So make sure to use the language that really fit the C-suite executives. And the value communicator, so you've got to be an exceptional communicator, communicate with purpose, and even communicate with courage. So instead of like reporting activities, you've got to shift your mindset around reporting impacts and reporting insight that really drive action and decision. And you think, and number 6, you've got to be an influence architect, simply meaning build trust and collaboration across the team. So all hands on deck kind of mindset, and stay away from pointing fingers, because what matters the most is driving with one business value, working collectively as one single team, serving one mission. So solution designer. So oftentimes, from my humble experience, I had realized, you know, the PMO leader jumping into, after done with the assessment, they start building solutions. And most of the time, those problem has been articulated within the assessment phase are symptoms, they're not real cause. So you got to go through 5 root cause analysis. So you got to hit deep to understand the underlying cause of this kind of issues. Because when you put the solution, you make sure you put the right solution to the right problem forever. So there is sort of like 3 biggest questions. I believe every single PMO or every successful PMO should question this kind of questions himself and answer it. And what are these kind of questions? What is the business problem we are really solving? So you got to shift your focus about a business-driven PMO. So you are really helping business leader solving business problem. It's not about solving project problem, because you are really holding the keys to the castle, and really you are a strategic business partner and strategy navigator who's supporting the whole value chain of the company. So how do you show value quickly? Where do you create the highest sustainable, impact? When you answer this kind of question, I could guarantee you 100% the leadership, they're gonna look at you differently, they're gonna respect you, and step by step you're gonna position yourself at the strategic table, because they trust in you, they have seen measurable, tangible value, and you show them value quickly, and you solve for them business problem. So simply speaking, the PMO leader impact formula is really outcome delivered with high speed of that impact. Therefore, you will gain the trust from the leadership. So exceptional PMO leader accelerate all the 3. And the bottom line, the PMO leaders is all about accelerating the strategy delivery. It's all about maximizing returns, increase the ROI as quickly as possible. So a mindset shift from a process to business impact. I'm gonna take you through a journey. What is the common pitfalls PMO often encounters, and what you're gonna do about them to avoid that? So simply speaking, one of those kind of mistakes, there is no clear value proposition. Oftentimes the PMO jump without understanding the why, the purpose of the PMO, and they haven't asked the right question, they haven't engaged the right key stakeholder, they haven't sit with the senior leadership team at the beginning, which is really crucial. We sit with them to understand all the why and why the PMO should serve. Mistake number 2, thinking you know best what your stakeholder needs. So before assuming give the key stakeholder what they need, you get to give them what they want. So if you listen twice as you speak, you really hit the biggest challenge is the pain point, stakeholder having, because they are experienced in their pain, they're not experienced in the PMO solutions. So you got to create a pull for your services and solution rather than creating a push. So asking, what do you want, before telling them, guys, I've done this before, so this is what you need. The mistake number 3, solving symptoms instead of root causes. As I said, before you driving or drafting solutions, you got to go through 5 or 7 root cause analysis to understand the underlying, causes of the issues. Oftentimes, PMO leaders, they don't really put clear roadmap, implementation roadmap that really, depicts what and why and how and when, what sort of a solution, capabilities, impact, the business value, the timelines, so that the leadership and the key stakeholder and all the teams, they will understand where they are today and where would like to go. So sort of like a very comprehensive, agile 1-year implementation roadmap that will really show them the direction, how future would gonna look like. Mistake number 5, delivering outputs instead of outcomes. So I'm not assuming it's only, you could possibly deliver outputs, but what matters the most is really shifting your focus on driving business value and business outcomes rather than only outputs. And the reason why, the senior leadership doesn't really care that much about the project's, outputs, time, quality, and scope when they put the check or hiring you to drive a successful journey. What they matter the most for them is really you show them a tangible business value that really align with the biggest picture strategy and moving the needle forward. Mistake number 6 is standing still while the business is shifting. Back in COVID-19, the global pandemic, when there is sort of shifting priorities, or you got to pivot, because if the PMO for the beginning has been agile and nimble and flexible, and you have sort of like adaptive leadership, you could really shifting your priorities, shifting your model, shifting your solution to the biggest needs, and you move forward from there. So what great PMO leaders do differently? So if the biggest or common pitfalls, as I said, is all about, tool obsession, micromanaging wrong stakeholder engagement, and low organization positioning, spending months on tooling templates and, building governance and methods. You got to shift your mindset around. You got to deliver quick wins, because 3 months maximum, the leadership, they're gonna pull the plug out of you if you haven't shown them quick value. So 3 months, 90 days is quite enough to deliver value, and I'm gonna show you how you do that. Communicating business value, not activities, because as I said, business leaders don't understand activities and project speak. Speak to them a business outcome-driven kind of language so that they can understand it. Right side governance, designing solution, not progressing, leading with influence and trust. And this lies back to the SMP, the spiritual, mental, physical, emotional readiness, that really influencing your leadership caliber, someone who's really strategically from the neuroscience or from the state of mind, kind of capabilities, he's mature and he's stable, so that he could really map against the biggest picture of the company. Aligning effort to the strategy, creating a pull, not a push for the solutions, and give them what they want before giving them what they need. So I'm going to take you through the critical areas often miss, that really drive a very quick wins, driving successful journey for the PMO. And simply is, when you're shifting your focus, or when you look at the holistic strategy life cycle from the, from the strategy formulation, strategy execution, moving forward to strategy realization. And, because imagine when a PMO leader has been hired, and the wrong practices often say that you go fix for us the project management. The project management is broken, project taking too long, it's costing too much. So oftentimes the problem is not in the execution side of the picture. It's often happening in the strategy front end. And you need to set the project right for success. When you do the right strategic planning, you do business case, and you get to answer the what and why and how for these kind of projects. So set the project right for success, then jump for the execution, and make sure to put the right metric that really, show that how successful you are. So I'm going to take you very quick sort of like the key strategy, the key result. This surveys has been gathered from different resources, from the PMI, from the Ghana, from the PwC, and from the economic survey, showing some sort of like a statistic about the PMO today. So one of these, money not really aligned with the strategy. So 60% of the stress of the organization don't really link their budget to the corporate strategy. There is obvious disconnect between the budget planning, between the biggest picture strategy, and the budget process. Management not aligned with strategy. There is obvious sort of disconnect between strategy. Even some of the project and program or portfolio managers don't really understand the strategy. Some of them might argue we don't have a strategy because they haven't been part of the strategic planning or strategy formulation at the beginning. And often I had realized sort of there is some sort of like unmature organization. They don't have any business case or project charter. They jump straight away with the planning. And the third pillar of this kind of statistic, people not aligned with the strategy. So 95% of the typical workforce, they don't really understand the strategy. And as per the economic survey, 60% of the executives struggle to really bridge the gap between the strategy formulation and the day-to-day implementation. So if the PMO feels undervalued, it's not because the executive don't care. Simply speaking, because executives don't see the outcomes they need from you. So my advice, if you really stop following the typical advice, okay, if you stop following the typical advice, you will get different result. So stop following typical advice if you want to stop getting typical result. So a premise from a PMI, the alignment of the PMO to the goal of the organization is the key driving pillar for any sort of like successful strategy implementation. So it's very crucial, it's very critical. The PMO should be really aligned with the biggest picture of the company. So there is a vision, mission, strategic priorities, and there is a goal. From these kind of goals, the strategy has been formulated. So the PMO is really from day one, not really serving the bottom line objective of the company or the direction of the company. I believe you might feel short down the line. So let me take you through sort of like a PMO, to rescue. Oftentimes, I had a story, a PMO leader has been hired, or a friend that I has been hired by a CEO. He asked him, come fix for us the project management. The project management is really broken. We don't realize the strategy. Oftentimes, the project's taking forever. So if you look at the holistic strategy life cycle, strategy definition, strategy execution, and strategy realization, and the strategy definition, if I break it down, this is where the strategic planning, when the idea has been generated and the project has been approved. Strategy execution, when the project implementation come into play. So you go through planning and delivery, and the strategy realization phase is all about the benefit realization and the ROI, or value measurement. So when the CEO has been asked the PMO leader, come fix for us for the project management, the PMO leader, they start away with building tool templates and building an army of the project managers. So building tools and templates and make it more progressy and consuming much time to show value. But it's still, and I start even training them and create more processes and so on. So it's still the project taking too long and costing too much, However, there's sort of like a very effective solution, that really drive a very successful journey, and you're going to position yourself as a strategy navigator who's really looking at the holistic strategy life cycle of the picture. And simply speaking, when you focus on the strategy execution side, perfecting tool and templates and processes and so on, still the issue will be there. Meaning, all the problem happening in the strategy definition, which is like, oftentimes you might realize CEOs or C-suite executive, they say everything is number one priority. And if everything is number one priority, or everything is important, nothing is important. And strategy unclear, resources got reallocated, managers redirecting stuff. And at the strategy realization side, still the project really don't meet the goals, taking too long, costing too much, and so they keep doing the same mistake over and over again. And the reason why they position themselves in the wrong area. So the mindset shift, it's not about how much you do. It's not about the stuff you do. It's all about the value you could contribute to the bottom line of the company. And when you look at the strategy execution side of the picture, you're missing the mark. Because where PMO could really drive the biggest value when really focusing on the strategy definition, because the strategy front of the picture is really where you set the tone, you set the project for success. At the same time, focusing more on the strategy realization that really help driving a business value, which is really aligned with the biggest picture of the company and objective and the goal. It doesn't mean the PMO shouldn't do templates and tool and processes, but there is sort of like a specific cadence and order where you could go for tooling and template and methodology and framework. However, start phased right with the strategy definition, okay, and the strategy execution, and the rest will come natural, and it has positive ripple effect, So last not least, I'm going to take you very quick sort of like a fast track, a proven model I have crafted for the last 9 months. And based on my expertise for the last 10 years at the PMO transformation and delivery leaders across different sectors in the MENA region. And I call it the PMO MVP value model. Simply, it's all about a minimum viable progress. You deliver one single value or quick wins every single sprint or every 90 days. Okay, through following 5-step journey, it could really be used through building, rescuing, elevating a PMO. That really would be, undeniable, unquestionable, a powerhouse model. So simply speaking, the PMO MBV value model is all about, before center about the SMP. As I said before, the SMP, spiritual, mental, and physical, emotional readiness, is all about the state of mind of the leader, because you're gonna drive a change journey with the key stakeholder. So you got to be able to navigate through different key stakeholders. Some of them the lover, hater, and don't care. And you go through like scanning, designing, planning, and launching, and iterate your way to value. Every 90 days, you do the same. So let me take you very quick, give you a deep insights about what is all these pillars all about. So to build a PMO powerhouse foundation is all about the human side of the picture. It's all about you as a PMO leader who driving the journey into success. So before you start preparing any sort of like framework or methodology or governance, you got to start by you. Am I emotionally ready? Physically? Because the emotional and mental and physical and spiritual readiness and resilience, that really drive high impact and business value, and even position you to navigate through different key stakeholders. So the second piece of the picture is scanning. So you got to scan the holistic strategy life cycle. Don't do the assessment within the strategy execution side of the picture. So you got to look holistically at the holistic strategy life cycle. Strategy formulation, execution, and the realization. So the scanning is very critical, because this is really position you or give you the opportunity to connect with the key stakeholders, build the positive relationship with them, build the trust, because eventually, if you are not really in favor, you partner with them, they're trusting you, they're gonna break and drain your progress. So it's very critical for two reasons. You build a positive relationship, you drive the momentum, and you hit the real challenges the stakeholder they're craving for. So when you do so, when you do the business transformation journey with them and through them, understand their wisdom and their why and their pains, okay, in their words, trust me, they're gonna begin for more, they're gonna begin for support. And especially when they have been seen, they have been heard, and their challenges and pain point has been resolved, and listen to them, give them what they want before you give them what they need. So you're creating a pull for your solution rather than, or opposed to creating a push for your service. So then you go for designing the value model. So after you're done with the assessment, before you go and building the solutions, you get to go. I mean, you have to take the leadership and the key stakeholders through root cause analysis to spot the real change, the real pains, the real challenges and opportunities. Then you can take it from there. So when it comes to planning, you will craft a fast implementation roadmap. It's a 1-year roadmap. It has all the solution, the capabilities, the impact, the business value, and the timelines when you're gonna build those kind of solutions. And you don't need to boil the ocean. When you implement them, you implement only one single solution or one single capabilities in one single sprint cycle or one quarter, then you move to the next. However, when you reach to this kind of stage, you craft this implementation plan, you show it to the leadership, team, to borrow tries. Okay, this is the priority number 1, this is solution number 2, number 3, and so on. So that when you implement them in a cadence based on an agreement, on alignment with the key stakeholder and the leadership. So then you go launching or implementing those kind of solutions. So when you implement the solution, you implement a single solution to bring quick wins and drive momentum. Okay, and then you could elevate your way to impact, so that you could really evolve, going back to do the assessment, and you refine the roadmap. Okay, and you take another solution and you implement it. By doing so, you really position yourself as a strategy navigator, and you build the trust, you drive the momentum, and you look at the holistic strategy life cycle. And I believe that's it. Thank you so much indeed.